Captain Jake Miller stood in the bridge of the colony ship Endeavour, watching his crew work the mining equipment through the large windows. They had been out here for 3 months now, pulling precious metals from the asteroids that floated like dead rocks in the darkness of space. It was hard work, but it paid well, and Jake liked his crew. They were good people who did their jobs without complaint. The ship's communication system made a soft, beeping sound. Lisa Carter, the ship's engineer, looked up from her control panel, with a confused expression on her face. "Captain, I'm getting something strange on the long-range sensors," she said. "There are ships coming toward us, big ones. I've never seen anything like them before." Jake walked over to look at Lisa's screen. The shapes moving toward them were definitely not human ships. They were too smooth, too perfect, like someone had carved them from a single piece of metal. There were 5 of them, and they were much larger than the Endeavour. "How long until they reach us?" Jake asked. "About 20 minutes, sir," Lisa replied. "Should I send a message to Earth?" Jake thought about it. Earth was weeks away, even with their fastest communication systems. By the time anyone got the message, whatever was going to happen would be over. "Not yet," he said. "Let's see what they want first." The crew gathered on the bridge as the alien ships came closer. Through the windows, they could see the strange vessels clearly now. They were beautiful in a cold, frightening way. Their hulls seemed to glow with a soft blue light, and they moved through space without making any sound that the human sensors could detect. Suddenly, the communication system crackled to life. A voice spoke in perfect English, though it sounded wrong somehow, like someone trying very hard to copy human speech. "Human vessel. This is High Commander Veltar of the Zephyrian Empire. We come to offer you a great opportunity." Jake looked at his crew. They all had the same worried expression on their faces. He pressed the communication button. "This is Captain Jake Miller of the human ship Endeavour. What kind of opportunity are you talking about?" There was a pause. Then the alien voice continued. "Your species has reached the stage where it can travel between stars. This brings you into contact with greater civilizations. We, the Zephyrians, have ruled 3 star systems for thousands of your years. We offer to guide your people into a better future." Jake didn't like the sound of that. "What does this guidance involve?" "Simple," Veltar replied. "Your people will place themselves under our protection. We will teach you better ways to live. In return, you will provide us with resources and labor. It is a fair trade." The captain looked around at his crew again. Lisa was shaking her head slowly. Pete Johnson, their maintenance chief, had his arms crossed and a dark look on his face. Kate Brooks, who handled communications, was already typing, something on her keyboard, probably trying to record everything that was being said. "And what if we're not interested in this deal?" Jake asked. The alien's voice became colder. "All species eventually see the wisdom of joining our empire. Some see it quickly. Others require more time to understand. We are patient, but we are also very powerful." As if to prove the point, one of the alien ships suddenly lit up with bright energy. A beam of light shot out and struck a large asteroid about a mile away from the Endeavour. The asteroid simply disappeared in a flash of light and heat. Jake felt his heart beating faster, but he kept his voice calm. "That's quite a demonstration. But I'm still not hearing why we should want to join your empire." "Because," Veltar said, and now his voice sounded angry, "the alternative is much worse for your species. We have destroyed entire worlds that refused our generous offer. Your weapons cannot harm our ships. Your technology is thousands of years behind ours. You have no choice." That's when Jake Miller did something that surprised everyone, including himself. He started laughing. "You know what, Veltar? You can take your generous offer and stick it where the sun don't shine." The bridge went completely quiet. Even the usual humming of the ship's engines seemed to stop. Lisa stared at the captain with her mouth open. Pete Johnson grinned and gave Jake a thumbs up. "I do not understand this expression," Veltar said, after a long pause. "It means no," Jake explained. "It means we're not interested. It means you can go find someone else to push around because it's not going to be us." "You would choose destruction over prosperity?" the alien asked. He sounded genuinely confused. "I'd choose freedom over slavery any day of the week," Jake replied. "And that's what you're offering, isn't it?" Slavery with extra steps. While Jake was talking, Lisa had been busy with her sensors, scanning the alien ships. She was good at her job and she was learning things. The alien ships were powerful, but they were not perfect. Everything had weaknesses if you looked hard enough. Dr. Sam Parker, the ship's scientist, had been listening to everything from her lab. She came onto the bridge carrying a tablet computer covered with notes. "Captain," she said quietly, "I've been analyzing their speech patterns and the energy signatures from their weapons. I think I'm starting to understand how their technology works." Veltar's voice came through the speakers again. "We will give you 72 of your hours to reconsider our offer. Think carefully, humans. This is the only chance your species will have to join the greater galaxy peacefully." "Don't hold your breath," Jake said and cut the communication line. The alien ships moved away from the Endeavor, but they didn't leave the area. They took positions around the human ship, watching and waiting. Jake looked at his crew. They were scared, but they weren't giving up. That was good. They were going to need that fighting spirit for what was coming next. "Lisa, I want you to keep scanning those ships, learn everything you can about them. Sam, work with her on analyzing their technology. Pete, start thinking about what we can use as weapons if we need to. Kate, try to get a message to Earth, but keep it quiet. We don't want our new friends to know what we're doing." "What are you planning, Captain?" Lisa asked. Jake looked out the window at the alien ships floating in the darkness. "I'm planning to show these Zephyrians what happens when someone messes with humans. They think they can scare us into giving up. They're about to learn that they picked the wrong species to threaten." The crew got to work and the Endeavor continued its slow orbit around the asteroid field. In 72 hours, the Zephyrians would return for their answer. Jake Miller already knew what that answer would be, and he was pretty sure Veltar wasn't going to like it. High Commander Veltar stood in the command center of his flagship, watching the human ship through the viewing screen. In all his years of service to the Zephyrian Empire, he had never encountered such a strange response to their offer of protection. Usually, species begged for mercy after seeing their demonstration of power. These humans had actually laughed at him. "Commander," said his tactical officer, "the humans have been scanning our ships for the past 2 days. Should we stop them?" Veltar waved a hand dismissively. "Let them look. Their primitive sensors cannot understand our technology. It will only make them realize how hopeless their situation is." But the human ship kept scanning, and somehow that made Veltar feel uncomfortable. He had conquered 17 different species in his career, and none of them had acted like this. They had all followed the same pattern: fear, then negotiation, then surrender. These humans were doing something different, and he didn't like it. "Sir," another officer reported, "we're detecting increased activity from the human ship. They appear to be modifying their systems." "Modifying them how?" Veltar asked. "Unknown, sir. But they're moving equipment around and running power cables to new locations." Veltar made a decision. "We will begin the demonstration phase. Target their mining station with a low-power blast. That will show them we mean business." The mining station was a small facility built into one of the larger asteroids. About 50 humans worked there, extracting metals and processing them for transport. It was the perfect target to show the humans what would happen if they continued to resist. The Zephyrian ship fired a carefully measured energy beam at the station. The blast was designed to damage but not destroy, to frighten but not kill. It was a standard tactic that had worked on every other species they had encountered. But the humans did not react the way they were supposed to. Colonel Amy Davis was in charge of security at the mining station. When the alarm started going off, she didn't order an evacuation. Instead, she grabbed her equipment and ran toward the damaged section of the station. "Get me damage reports," she shouted into her communicator. "I want to know exactly what kind of weapon they used and how much damage it caused." Her security team followed her example. Instead of panicking, they began taking pictures and measurements of the damage. They collected pieces of melted metal and ran them through their portable analyzers. They treated the attack like a learning opportunity. "Colonel," one of her men called out, "this blast pattern is really interesting. Look at how the energy spread through the metal. I think we can figure out how their weapons work from this." Amy smiled grimly. "Good. Send all the data to the Endeavor. Let's make sure Captain Miller knows what we're dealing with. On the Zephyrian flagship, Veltar watched the human response with growing confusion. The tactical display showed the humans moving around the damaged station, but they weren't evacuating. They were studying the damage his weapons had caused. "Sir," his sensor operator reported, "the humans are broadcasting detailed analysis of our weapon effects to all their ships in the area." "They're doing what?" Veltar demanded. "They're sharing information about our attack patterns, sir. It appears they're treating this as a research opportunity." Veltar had never seen anything like it. When the Corvallis had first been attacked, they had immediately surrendered. When the Threxy had been demonstrated against, they had begged for mercy. These humans were taking notes. Meanwhile, back on the Endeavor, the crew was getting very busy. Lisa Carter had connected her engineering systems to the mining station's sensors, giving her detailed information about the Zephyrian weapons. Pete Johnson was in the cargo bay, taking apart mining equipment and rebuilding it into something else entirely. "Captain," Lisa called out from her station, "I think I understand how their shields work. They're designed to stop high-energy, focused attacks, but I don't think they're built to handle multiple low-energy impacts." Jake Miller nodded. "What are you thinking?" "Well, our mining charges aren't very sophisticated, but we have a lot of them, and if we can modify them to explode in sequence, we might be able to overload their defensive systems." In the communications center, Kate Brooks was having a very interesting conversation with her counterpart on Earth. The message delay was frustrating, but she was managing to coordinate with human settlements throughout the solar system. "Kate," came the voice from Earth, "we're sending every available ship your way. It's going to take time, but help is coming." "Understood," Kate replied. "Tell them to bring everything they can. These aliens think they're tough, but they've never fought humans before." Dr. Sam Parker was in her laboratory, studying the recordings of the Zephyrian communications. She had discovered something important about their language and behavior. Patterns. "Captain," she announced over the ship's communication system, "I think these Zephyrians have a problem. They're used to quick victories. Their whole military doctrine is based on overwhelming force leading to immediate surrender. They don't know how to fight a long war." Jake found that information very interesting. Humans, on the other hand, were very good at long wars. They had been fighting each other for thousands of years and had gotten quite good at it. On the mining station, Colonel Amy Davis was implementing her own plans. She had taken inventory of everything they had available and was turning it all into weapons. The mining mechs were being fitted with improvised armor. The construction tools were being modified to cut through alien metal. Even the food processing equipment was being converted into something useful for the coming fight. "Colonel," one of her engineers reported, "we've figured out how to turn the mining lasers into weapons. They're not very powerful, but if we hit the same spot repeatedly, we can cut through almost anything." Amy grinned. "Excellent. How many can we set up?" "At least 20, ma'am. And if we network them together, we can concentrate their fire." Back on the Zephyrian flagship, Veltar was receiving reports that made him increasingly uncomfortable. The humans weren't behaving like any species he had encountered before. They were organized, determined, and they seemed to be getting stronger rather than weaker as time went on. "Sir," his intelligence officer reported, "we're detecting communication signals between the human ship and multiple locations throughout their system. They appear to be coordinating some kind of response." "How many ships do they have?" Veltar asked. "Unknown, sir. But the communication patterns suggest they have vessels spread throughout several star systems." Veltar made another decision. "We will increase the pressure, target their ship directly with a warning shot. That will show them that we can destroy them whenever we choose." But as he gave the order, he noticed something that made his blood run cold. The human ship had moved. It was no longer in the same position it had been in when they first arrived. Somehow, while his crew had been watching, the humans had repositioned their vessel to a more defensible location among the asteroids. These humans were not acting like any conquered species he had ever encountered. They were acting like they intended to fight back. The energy beam lanced out from the Zephyrian ship, passing close to the Endeavor's hull. It was meant to be a demonstration, a show of power that would finally break human resistance. Instead, Jake Miller's voice came over the communication system, calm and steady. "Thanks for the light show, Veltar. Now let me show you something." The human ship suddenly lit up with dozens of small explosions as mining charges detonated in sequence around the Zephyrian vessel. The explosions were tiny compared to Zephyrian weapons, but there were so many of them and they came from so many different directions. For the first time in his military career, High Commander Veltar watched his shields flicker and fail under attack from a supposedly primitive species. The humans had just fired the first shot in a war that the Zephyrians were beginning to realize they might not understand at all. High Commander Veltar stared at his tactical display in disbelief. His ship's shields had actually failed for several seconds during the human attack. It should have been impossible. The mining charges the humans had used were primitive compared to Zephyrian technology, but somehow they had worked. "Damage report," he ordered his crew. "Minor hull scorching, sir," came the reply. "But our shields were completely overloaded for 18 seconds. If they had used real weapons during that time..." Veltar didn't want to think about that. How did they do it? His tactical officer pulled up the analysis. "They used hundreds of small explosions in a specific pattern. Our shields are designed to deflect large, focused energy attacks. But these tiny explosions came from every direction at once. The system couldn't handle the multiple impact points." This was not going according to plan. Veltar had expected the humans to surrender after seeing Zephyrian power. Instead, they had found a way to hurt his ships. He needed to end this quickly before the situation got worse. "Prepare for full attack," he commanded. "We will destroy their ship and end this resistance." But the humans had been busy while the Zephyrians were analyzing their shield failure. Chief Engineer Roy Smith had been working non-stop in the Endeavor's cargo bay surrounded by mining equipment and industrial supplies. "Captain," Roy called over the communication system, "I've got something that might interest those alien friends of ours." Jake Miller made his way to the cargo bay and found Roy standing next to what looked like a giant metal tube with fins welded to the sides. "What is it?" Jake asked. "Well, officially it's a mining charge delivery system," Roy grinned. "Unofficially, it's the biggest damn rocket I could build out of spare parts. I loaded it with about 2 tons of mining explosives and gave it a guidance system made from our navigation computer." Jake looked at the improvised weapon. It was ugly, crude, and looked like it might explode before it reached its target. It was also exactly the kind of thing that might work against enemies who expected sophisticated weapons. "Will it fly?" he asked. "Only one way to find out, Captain." Meanwhile, pilot Nina Torres was having her own ideas about how to fight the Zephyrians. She had been studying their ship movements and had noticed something important. "Captain," she reported, "those alien ships are fast and they have good shields, but they're not very maneuverable. They're built for straight-line attacks against enemies who fight the same way they do." "What are you thinking?" Jake asked. "I'm thinking our ships are smaller and can turn faster. If we can get in close, we might be able to stay in their blind spots long enough to cause some real damage." Nina's observation proved correct when the Zephyrian attack began. 5 alien ships moved toward the human positions in a perfect formation, their weapons charging for a coordinated assault that should have destroyed the Endeavor and the mining station in seconds. Instead, they found themselves fighting an enemy that refused to follow any recognizable battle plan. Roy's improvised rocket flew straight at the lead Zephyrian ship, wobbling through space like a drunk bird. The alien gunners tried to shoot it down, but their targeting systems were designed for fast, evasive targets. The slow, clumsy human missile was actually harder to hit than a sophisticated weapon would have been. The rocket struck the Zephyrian ship's hull and exploded with tremendous force. The blast didn't penetrate the alien armor, but it knocked the ship sideways and disrupted their attack formation. At the same time, Nina Torres led 3 small human shuttles in a wild, spiraling attack run. The shuttles were never designed for combat, but they were fast and agile. Nina had strapped mining lasers to their hulls and loaded them with every explosive device the humans could find. "Stay close to their ships," she instructed her wingmen over the radio. "Don't give them room to use their big weapons." The human shuttles zipped around the Zephyrian vessels like angry bees, firing mining lasers and dropping improvised bombs. The alien ships tried to swat them with their main weapons, but the humans were too close and moving too erratically. On the mining station, Colonel Amy Davis had her own surprise ready. Her security team had spent the past day turning the entire facility into a weapon. When the Zephyrian ships came within range, she activated her plan. 20 mining lasers fired simultaneously at a single Zephyrian vessel, their beams focused on one small section of the ship's hull. The individual lasers were weak, but concentrated together they burned through the alien armor like a hot knife through butter. "Direct hit," one of her gunners reported. "We've breached their hull." But Amy wasn't finished. "Launch the mining mechs," she ordered. The mining mechs were massive robotic suits designed for working in dangerous environments. Amy's team had modified them with cutting tools, explosive charges, and improvised armor made from asteroid metal. Now they launched themselves through space toward the damaged Zephyrian ship. Commander Luke Hayes was piloting the lead mech. He had volunteered for what everyone agreed was probably a suicide mission. As his mech approached the Zephyrian vessel, he could see alien crew members through the breach in their hull. "Going in," he reported calmly, as if he was heading to work in a mine instead of boarding an enemy warship. Luke's mech crashed through the hull breach and landed inside the Zephyrian ship. The aliens inside had never seen anything like the bulky human machine. Their personal weapons bounced harmlessly off its improvised armor. Luke activated his cutting torch and began slicing through critical systems. He didn't know exactly what everything did, but he figured if it looked important, it was worth breaking. "Luke," came Amy's voice over the radio. "How are you doing in there?" "Just fine, Colonel," Luke replied as he tore apart what looked like a control panel. "These aliens build pretty ships, but they're not very good at close-quarters fighting." Back on the Zephyrian flagship, Veltar watched his carefully planned attack fall apart. One of his ships was being torn apart from the inside by a human in a crude mechanical suit. Another was spinning out of control after being hit by an improvised rocket. The small human shuttles were still buzzing around his vessels, impossible to target with his main weapons. "Sir," his tactical officer reported, "the humans are using completely unconventional tactics. Our combat computers don't know how to respond to their attack patterns." Veltar realized that his enemy was not following any military doctrine he understood. The humans were making up their tactics as they went along, using whatever was available, turning civilian equipment into weapons. Dr. Rachel Stone, watching the battle from the Endeavor, was taking detailed notes on Zephyrian technology and tactics. Every time the aliens fired their weapons or maneuvered their ships, she learned something new about their capabilities and limitations. "Captain," she announced, "I think I've figured out their weakness. Their technology is incredibly advanced, but it's also incredibly standardized. All their ships use the same systems, the same tactics, the same responses to threats. They're not built to handle enemies who improvise." Jake Miller smiled as he watched Nina Torres lead another attack run past a Zephyrian ship, this time dropping a cargo container full of mining explosives directly onto their hull. "Well, Doctor," he said, "improvising is something humans are very good at." The battle was far from over, but already the Zephyrians were learning something important about their new enemies. Humans didn't fight fair, they didn't follow rules, and they certainly didn't give up when they were supposed to. High Commander Veltar was beginning to understand that he had made a very serious mistake. These humans were not like any species he had encountered before. They were dangerous in ways he had never imagined possible, and this was just the beginning. High Commander Veltar stood in his damaged command center, watching the tactical display with growing horror. What had started as a simple demonstration of power had turned into a nightmare. 3 of his 5 ships were badly damaged, and the humans showed no signs of stopping their attacks. "Sir," his communication officer reported, "we're receiving a priority message from the Zephyrian High Command. They want a status report on the human subjugation." Veltar closed his eyes. How could he explain that a handful of primitive humans with mining equipment had crippled his fleet? "Tell them we are encountering unexpected resistance and may require additional forces." But before his officer could send the message, the sensor alarm started screaming. New contacts were approaching, from deeper in the human solar system. Lots of them. "Sir," the sensor operator called out, "I count at least 30 human vessels approaching our position. They'll be here in 6 hours." Veltar studied the incoming ships on his display. They were not military vessels. The sensor readings showed cargo ships, passenger transports, mining vessels, even what appeared to be civilian pleasure craft. But they were all heading directly toward the battle zone. What kind of species sends cargo ships to fight a war? He muttered. He was about to find out. Admiral Jack Turner commanded the hastily assembled human fleet from the bridge of a converted cargo hauler called the Liberty Bell. The ship had been carrying grain to Mars when the call went out for all available vessels to respond to the alien threat. Now its cargo holds were filled with volunteers and whatever weapons Earth could provide on short notice. Admiral, his tactical officer reported, we've got visual contact with the alien fleet. Captain Miller's ship is still operational, and it looks like they've been giving the aliens a hard time. Jack smiled. He had served with Jake Miller years ago, and knew the man was too stubborn to give up easily. Open a channel to all ships. Let's let these aliens know that the cavalry has arrived. The communication system crackled to life across the human fleet. This is Admiral Turner to all vessels. Remember, these aliens think they can push humanity around. Let's show them what happens when you mess with the wrong species. The response came from 30 different ships at once. Cargo haulers, mining vessels, passenger liners, and even a few actual military ships all acknowledged the order. The fleet was a strange mix of vessels that had never been designed to work together, but they had one thing in common. They were all crewed by very angry humans. On the Zephyrian flagship, Veltar watched the approaching human fleet with confusion. What are they planning to do with cargo ships? He asked his tactical officer. Unknown, sir. But our intelligence reports indicate that humans have a history of converting civilian vessels for military use during emergencies. Veltar was about to learn just how creative humans could be with their conversions. Engineer Maria Lopez had spent the trip from Earth working on a special project in the Liberty Bell's cargo hold. She had taken the ship's main power core and connected it to a device of her own design, something she called a feedback amplifier. Admiral, she reported to Jack Turner, I think I figured out how to turn their own shields against them. If I can get close enough to one of their ships, I can send an overload pulse through their defensive grid. How close is close enough? Jack asked. About 50 meters, sir, and I'll need to maintain the connection for at least 30 seconds. Jack looked at the tactical display. Getting that close to an enemy ship and staying there for 30 seconds would be almost impossible under normal circumstances. But these weren't normal circumstances, and humans were very good at doing impossible things. Meanwhile, Tactical Officer Ben Clark had been studying the alien ship movements from his position on a converted mining vessel called the Hard Worker. He had noticed something important about the way the Zephyrians fought. All ships, he broadcast, the aliens are using predictable attack patterns. They move in formation and fire in sequence. If we can coordinate our movements, we can stay ahead of their targeting systems. Ben's observation proved crucial as the human fleet engaged the Zephyrians. Instead of attacking in formation like a normal military force, the human ships scattered in all directions, each one following its own chaotic path through the battle zone. The Zephyrian combat computers, designed to fight organized enemies, couldn't cope with 30 ships all doing different things at the same time. Their targeting systems kept switching between targets, never able to focus their fire effectively. Dr. Tony Ward, broadcasting from a communication ship called Mercury's Voice, had his own contribution to the battle. He began transmitting human historical documentaries directly to the Zephyrian ships. Attention Zephyrian forces, he announced. You wanted to know about human civilization. Let me show you our history. The documentaries were about human wars. Videos of World War II battles, footage from Vietnam, recordings of every major conflict in human history. The Zephyrian intelligence officers who intercepted the broadcast were horrified by what they saw. Sir, one of them reported to Veltar, these humans have been fighting wars for their entire recorded history. They've been killing each other with increasingly sophisticated methods for thousands of years. Veltar felt a chill run down his spine. The Zephyrians were technologically advanced, but they had achieved their empire through intimidation and quick victories. They had never fought an enemy that actually enjoyed fighting. The battle reached its climax when Maria Lopez managed to get the Liberty Bell close enough to a Zephyrian cruiser to activate her feedback device. The alien ship's shields began to fluctuate wildly as the overload pulse tore through their defensive systems. "Now," Admiral Turner shouted over the communication system. "Hit them while their shields are down." 20 human ships opened fire simultaneously on the defenseless Zephyrian vessel. Mining lasers, improvised missiles, and even modified cargo handling equipment struck the alien ship from every direction. The cruiser's hull cracked and began venting atmosphere into space. Commander Luke Hayes, still inside the damaged Zephyrian ship from his earlier boarding action, felt the vessel shudder around him. "Colonel Davis," he reported over the radio, "I think it's time for me to leave." "Agreed," Amy replied. "Get out of there, Luke." Luke's mining mech blasted out through the hull breach just as the Zephyrian ship exploded behind him. The other human ships picked him up and continued their attack on the remaining alien vessels. On his flagship, Veltar realized that the situation was hopeless. His technologically superior fleet was being destroyed by converted cargo ships and mining equipment. The humans were using tactics that made no sense but somehow worked perfectly. "Sir," his tactical officer reported, "we're detecting more human ships approaching from multiple directions. It appears that their entire species is mobilizing for war." Veltar looked at the display showing dozens of new contacts approaching from every corner of the human solar system. Passenger ships, cargo haulers, research vessels, even small personal craft were all heading toward the battle. It seemed like every human who could fly a spaceship was coming to join the fight. "How many ships do they have?" he asked weakly. "Thousands, sir. And they're all converting to military configuration as they approach." For the first time in his military career, High Commander Veltar felt genuine fear. The Zephyrians had expected to face a small number of human ships in a quick, decisive battle. Instead, they had awakened something terrible. An entire species that treated war not as a last resort, but as a problem to be solved through superior violence and creativity. "Open a channel," Veltar ordered. "I need to speak with the human, Commander." Admiral Turner's face appeared on the communication screen. He looked calm, confident, and completely unimpressed by Zephyrian technology. "This is Admiral Turner." "What do you want, Veltar?" "Admiral," Veltar said carefully, "perhaps we can discuss terms for ending this conflict." Jack Turner smiled, but it wasn't a friendly smile. "Oh, we're going to end this conflict, all right, but I don't think you're going to like our terms." The Zephyrians were about to learn what humans meant when they talked about unconditional surrender. Admiral Jack Turner stood on the bridge of the Liberty Bell, looking at the broken remains of the Zephyrian fleet floating in space around him. 3 alien ships had been completely destroyed, and the remaining 2 were badly damaged and defenseless. The human fleet surrounded them like a pack of wolves around wounded prey. "Admiral," his communication officer reported, "High Commander Veltar is requesting permission to speak with you again." "Put him through," Jack said. He was curious to hear what the alien had to say now that his superior technology had failed him. Veltar's face appeared on the screen. The proud, arrogant commander who had threatened humanity just days ago now looked tired and defeated. "Admiral Turner, I wish to discuss the terms of our withdrawal from your space." Jack crossed his arms. "Withdrawal? That's an interesting word. Choice. See, from where I'm standing, it looks more like surrender. We are willing to leave your territory and promise never to return," Veltar said quickly. "This conflict has been a misunderstanding. The Zephyrian Empire had no intention of causing harm to your species." Captain Jake Miller's voice came over the communication system from the Endeavor. "That's funny, Veltar. I seem to remember you threatening to destroy our entire planet if we didn't submit to your empire." Commander Susan Price, who had arrived with the main fleet aboard a converted research vessel, added her own thoughts. "Admiral, while you've been fighting these aliens, my team has been analyzing the data from their ships. We've learned some very interesting things about Zephyrian space." Jack raised an eyebrow. "What kind of things, Commander?" "Well, sir, it turns out their navigation systems contain detailed maps of their territory. We now know the location of every Zephyrian world, military base, and trade route. We also know that their entire empire is built around the idea that they're the strongest species in the galaxy. Susan paused to let that information sink in. If word gets out that a primitive species like humanity defeated them in battle, it might cause problems for their empire. Other conquered species might start getting ideas about rebellion. Veltar's face went pale. You cannot be serious. You would not attack innocent Zephyrian worlds. Innocent? Jake Miller laughed. You came here planning to enslave our entire species. You attacked our mining station and tried to destroy our ships. And now you want to talk about innocence? Admiral, Turner studied the alien commander for a long moment. Here's what's going to happen, Veltar. You're going to take your remaining ships and leave our space. You're going to return to your empire and tell them that humanity is off limits forever. And if any Zephyrian ship ever enters human space again, we'll consider it an act of war. Agreed, Veltar said quickly. We will mark your territory as forbidden and ensure no Zephyrian vessel approaches your worlds. I'm not finished, Jack continued. You're also going to provide us with complete information about any other species your empire has conquered. We want to know who they are and where to find them. Veltar looked confused. Why would you want that information? Dr. Sam Parker, speaking from the Endeavor, explained. Because we think those species might be interested in learning that the mighty Zephyrian Empire isn't as mighty as it pretends to be. The implications of that statement were clear to everyone listening. Humanity wasn't just planning to defend themselves. They were planning to spread the word about Zephyrian weakness to every enslaved species in their empire. You would cause the collapse of our entire civilization, Veltar whispered. You would have destroyed ours, Jake Miller replied. The only difference is that we're giving you a choice. Engineer Carl Dixon, working from a converted cargo ship, chose that moment to make an announcement that sent chills down Veltar's spine. Admiral, I've got good news. We've successfully reverse-engineered their hyperspace tracking technology. We can now follow Zephyrian ships wherever they go. Excellent work, Carl, Admiral Turner said. That means we'll know if they try to bring reinforcements or attack any other human settlements. Veltar realized that his situation had become impossible. The humans had not only defeated his fleet, but they had also learned enough about Zephyrian technology to track his ships and potentially threaten his entire empire. The species he had dismissed as primitive had outthought, and outmaneuvered his forces at every turn. I accept your terms, he said finally. But please understand, Admiral Turner, that the Zephyrian Empire has existed for thousands of years. We have brought peace and prosperity to dozens of worlds. Peace through conquest isn't peace, Commander Price replied. It's just slavery with better marketing. Maria Lopez, still aboard the Liberty Bell, had been monitoring the alien ships during the conversation. Admiral, she reported, I'm detecting power buildup in their remaining weapon systems. I think they might be planning one last attack. Jack. Turner's expression hardened. Is that true, Veltar? Are you planning to go back on our deal already? No, Veltar said quickly. My crew is merely preparing for departure. We have no intention of continuing this fight. But Lisa Carter, monitoring from the Endeavor, had detected the same energy signatures. Captain Miller, she announced, those ships are definitely charging their weapons. Whatever they're planning, they're not giving up. Jake Miller made a decision that would end the conflict once and for all. All ships prepare to fire. If those aliens so much as twitch in our direction, destroy them completely. Veltar saw the human ships all turning their weapons toward his vessels. Mining lasers, improvised missiles, and converted cargo equipment all focused on the two remaining Zephyrian ships. He realized that his crew's attempt to prepare for a final desperate attack had been detected and countered. Stand down, he ordered his crew. Power down all weapon systems immediately. The energy readings from the Zephyrian ships dropped to safe levels, but the damage to their credibility was complete. They had just proven that they couldn't be trusted to honor their own surrender. That settles it, Admiral Turner announced. You've just demonstrated that Zephyrian promises are worthless. Here are your new terms. You leave now and you never come back. If we detect any Zephyrian ship within 100 light-years of human space, we'll assume you're planning another attack and respond accordingly. And just so we're clear, Dr. Ashley King added from her position aboard a research vessel, we've decoded your navigation systems completely. We know where all your worlds are located. We know your trade routes, your military bases, and your weaknesses. If you ever threaten humanity again, we won't just defend ourselves. We'll come looking for you. Veltar understood the message perfectly. The humans weren't just driving him away. They were promising that any future aggression would result in humanity bringing the war directly to Zephyrian space. We will leave immediately, he said. The Zephyrian Empire will have no further contact with humanity. See that it doesn't, Jake Miller replied, because if you ever come back there won't be any negotiations, we'll just start shooting. The two remaining Zephyrian ships limped away from the battle zone, their hulls scarred and their crews defeated. As they disappeared into hyperspace, the human fleet remained in position, watching until the alien vessels were completely gone. Admiral Turner opened a communication channel to all human ships. Well done, everyone. We've just taught the galaxy an important lesson about what happens when someone messes with humanity. Commander Price was already working on her next project. Admiral, I recommend we start sending messages to those enslaved species the Zephyrians told us about. They might be interested in learning that their masters aren't as powerful as they pretend to be. Agreed, Turner replied. Let's make sure the word gets out. The Zephyrian Empire is about to discover that they've made enemies of the wrong species. As the human fleet began dispersing back to their home ports, Carl Dixon made one final announcement that perfectly captured the spirit of the moment. Admiral, he said with a grin, I think we just taught the entire galaxy the meaning of that old human saying. Which saying is that, Carl? Mess around and find out. The Zephyrian Empire would never make the mistake of underestimating humanity again. Unfortunately for them, they had already made that mistake once, and in the unforgiving mathematics of interstellar politics, once was enough to change everything.